If you love building model cars or anything automotive related, check out my buddies Jason, BG, Justin, Mike, and Jody over at the Model Car Mania podcast. It's always a good time. And if you're just a modeler of any kind, check out the Modeling Insanity podcast, where they talk about everything styrene related. Hello, friends and followers. Welcome back to TJ's Modeling Bench. We are working on the F4 Phantom 2 148 scale by Hasegawa, and I think I'm off to a pretty good start. So come on over to the bench and let me show you what's going on. All right, the best place to start is at the beginning. These are the True Details resin pieces that I have. The Martin Baker ejection seats, and then the wheels and tires. And I was looking at this wheels and tires a little bit. I may end up ordering some 3D printed wheels and tires instead. There's a little bit of resin in these recessed areas that shouldn't be there. This one on the bottom side, and then this one on the top side. And that's the outside of the wheel, which is visible once it's mounted. So this is the backside that goes onto the strut. And because that is so visible, and it's very hard to be able to clean that out, so I may end up ordering 3D resin instead, because these are not quite as nice as I would like them to be. I mean, they're probably as nice as you could get back 20 years ago, but I'm pretty sure you can get something a little better now. These are weighted wheels. I don't know if you can see that in the camera or not, but they bulge out at the bottom a little bit. And honestly, I don't know how accurate that bulge is. They look over bulged to my eye, if that's even a word. I was an aircraft mechanic. I did not work on the fighters, but if I saw that, I would say those tires need more air. So yeah, I think we're probably not going to use those at all. But anyway, the Martin Baker ejection seats, you have to remove the seat from this base block, and removing resin like this can be what's the word, a little not dangerous, but it can be a health risk of sorts, the dust that comes out of this resin. So it's suggested that you have water like this to help keep the dust down and keep it from getting airborne. And then this is the razor saw that I use. This side has a very fine tooth on it. This side has a little bit more aggressive tooth. So we'll probably use the more aggressive side on this. And we're going to cut right below the seat. So we'll probably start at the back side and work our way toward the front, because there's a little bit of flash here that goes right into where we're going to be cutting, but it is flash. And there's just a little bit of flash cleanup to do on these. This D handle for the ejection sequence, that center should be open. So there's some flash in the center of that one. And probably on this side too, that's flash. I'm going to have to look at some reference photos to be positive about that though. So there's a little bit of cleanup to do on these. A little bit different than using the 3D printed resins that we're using today. That's a much softer resin, easier to work with in my opinion. This stuff is very hard and can actually be very brittle as well. So there's still some care that needs to be taken when doing this, but probably not as brittle as using the 3D resin, 3D printed resin. Anyway, so this is how we start. We're gonna get the saw blade a little wet, and and drop our seat in the water, make sure it's nice and wet, and just slowly start our saw cut. Now, because of the way this is mounted, this blade, you can only go so deep before you hit the mounting hardware for the blade itself. So you're going to have to start on one side, move to another side, kind of work your way around till you get closer to the middle. And then hopefully when you get to that point, see, I can't even go that deep on this right now, so I'm gonna have to work on the side. Hopefully when you get closer to the middle, you can snap it. But, all right, there we go. A little bit of cleanup to do on the bottom of each one. Not much. Just run that across some sandpaper a couple times, that'll be good. But I got them both cut free. So once we do the little bit of cleanup that we need to do, oh, look at that. My D-ring actually busted off of there. But I'm gonna have to look at my the photo etch that I have for these, because I think maybe I can replace those with photo etch. And at the very least, I can probably just make some rings with some of the lead wire that I have that's almost exactly that same diameter. But either way, these do and will look much better than the kit provided seats. All right, so step number 1 in our instruction manual is actually assembling our pilot figures, our crew members. And I haven't really decided fully if I'm gonna use them in the cockpits or if I'm gonna leave them out of the aircraft. But I'm gonna go ahead and assemble them, paint them, have them all ready, and I'll make that decision much later in the build whether or not to include them. So, but here's what you're given. You've got your pilot bodies. Looks like I need to find another, oh no, I was gonna say I need to find another arm, but this is apparently your back seater. He's got his right hand on his right thigh there. This would be your pilot up front with his hand on the throttle. This is probably his right arm so that he can grip the control yoke. And then this is the left arm of our backseater, and it looks like maybe he's also going to be gripping something. And then our heads. Yeah. Pretty good detail, actually. You know, they're 1/48th scale. So better than 1/72nd in my opinion. I still use the Optivisor for everything, but I was at Anniston for the Phantom Flashers Furball IPMS contest, and I judged some of the 72nd scale aircraft, and there's no way I could build in that scale. Not for jets and fight, especially World War II era fighters that were much smaller anyway. Whew. No, don't even expect me to try to build one of those. But anyway, we'll get these cleaned up, glued together, then primed and painted accordingly, and we'll go from there. Right, after scraping away the seam lines, or the mold lines rather, which were on each side of each pilot or crew members, the proper way to describe them both. But our front seater looks like he's been shot already. He's got a big old cavity right there in the middle of his chest, so I'll have to use a little bit of I'll probably use a little bit of putty maybe, and then this Tamiya liquid surface primer to go over that, and then we'll primer it and paint whatnot. But they don't look too bad. There was a mold line went straight through the visor on both of the heads, around the back and down the visor, and it's probably even, it is there in the oxygen hose, but it's not very visible. It may be more visible after I prime it. We'll see about that. And like I said, I still haven't determined if I'm going to use these or not, but I thought I'd go ahead and get them ready, paint them up. That way, if I decide to use them, I can. If I don't, then I don't have to worry about it. But they will be ready to go if needed. And then, oh, I know what I was going to show you next. That's why I had my Tamiya thin here. So, and I'm sure most guys know this, but for those of you that, you know, maybe haven't really built a lot of models yet, and you're kind of getting into it or getting back into it from years ago, after you scrape your mold lines, which I use the sharp side of my X-Acto, all right, or my number 11 blade. It's not necessarily an X-Acto blade, which is a brand name, so it's a number 11 blade. Then I take the Tamiya thin and wipe most of it off the brush, and then go right over those scraped areas. And what that does is it'll soften the scraped areas just enough that they no longer look like a scraped area, right? So if there's any more flash in that spot that you scraped, it will quickly disappear from the hot liquid cement. And we'll even go real quick over his helmet and down his mask, and then a little bit of that oxygen hose. And then both hands, well, not so much his right hand, but this left hand, it's kind of got a funky shape. So we're gonna melt that into a better shape. There was quite a bit of flash that I had to scrape away from him. And same with our backseater, otherwise known as a WISO, which is an acronym, and it stands for Weapons Safety Officer. So your front seater is your pilot, your back seater is your WISO, and together they are a crew. So just like recently in the news, the F-15 that was shot down over in Iran, the press was really incorrectly calling them both pilots. The rear seat WISO may be qualified to actually fly the aircraft in the event that the commanding pilot in command, PIC, is injured or disabled in some way where he can't fly the aircraft. But technically, you have the pilot and the WISO, and they are a crew. So 2 crew members were rescued from that shoot down. Not 2 pilots, 2 crew members. All right, adding all this photo etch detail is very time consuming, and it's very important that you have your reference material handy for very, specific panels and things, such as on the interior side of the cockpit tub. All right, so the side consoles, were not replacing any of that detail, but there is some added detail on the side panels below that, between where the seats would be, and then also on the sides of the interior of the fuselage. And on this one, you can see I've already scraped away what detail was here in the front and added this piece of photo etch that's been folded and glued in place. And I'm working on some more of that now. Another thing of note as far as detail and reference material. So right here, these are your rudder pedals, right? But there are 2 different types. And this particular type on my aircraft is this flat plate that has no the lightning holes in it, right? So they look like that. But you got to look at the reference material to be sure, because one of these may work fine in an E model and one may work better in the G model or an F model or whatever, or an early E versus a late E. And then if you look on the back side, you see a little bit of a line on that one. That's a fold line. So this bottom rectangular portion of it will get folded 90 degrees, and then we'll glue it into place. And the fold will actually go on the back side. So this will fold toward us, I believe. No, actually, I'm wrong about that. It actually folds back. So, if you were to fold it, it would actually. tiny little stuff. It would actually stand up on the fold with the fold going back behind it. But that's what I'm working on now, is removing Photo-Etch from its frets and then bending as necessary. Now, like some of these instrument panel pieces, you can see they're already painted or colored. And there's a few other pieces in this set that have color already added. So what I'm doing is I'm only adding the pieces into the interior portions of it that don't have color added yet. So we can primer everything once those are in place and then paint afterward. All right, so this is one of the panels that goes on the interior side, the right interior side of the Wizzo seat. So it's between the seat and the side of the aircraft, which may or may not even be visible, but we're going to add it anyway. That's just the kind of crazy that we are. All right, so this green thing you see in front of me here, this is called an etch mate. I bought this, 20 plus years ago now. I don't use it a lot. Originally made by Mission Models. I don't know if they still make this one or not, honestly. But if not, you can find other versions of this, some smaller, which probably wouldn't have been a bad thing for me to do, get a smaller one, because I probably don't really use as much of this as what it's designed for. And you can even use different modeling pliers, like these are flat jaw, and what I've been using this for actually is, once you get a piece off the fret, sometimes you've got a little nub left from where it was attached, and what I'll do is I'll put it in the pliers and hold it while I use a flat file and remove that little bit of a burr that's left behind so that it's not noticeable on the final part. So the way this works, and I'm going to use tweezers to get this into place. So generally what you do is you find the tine that closely matches what it is you're working with. So we're going to use this one down here on the end. And what I'm going to do is I've got it a little bit loose so that I can slide that underneath just to where that fold line is. All right. And then we'll tighten it down. And you can see it is right there on that line. And then we'll take just a single edge razor blade. We'll slide it under the part, and then you see this little engraved line in this. The edge of your blade will sit down in that as you're folding, and then it'll help you get, all right. And then generally what you want to do is go just slightly past 90 degrees if you're looking for a 90-degree bend, because the metal will have just a little bit of spring to it. So if you go just beyond 90 and let go, it'll usually spring back into that 90-degree position. And that's what we want. So there you can see. Well, maybe it won't stand up like that, but yeah, there you go. So I'll do that with these others, and I'll keep working on some more Photo-Etch and then getting it glued into place. Then we can primer everything and proceed from there. I go back and forth between the glue that I use for Photo-Etch. At times I will use the BSI odorless thin. Not real often do I use thin on things like this, thin CA. I use this more when I'm putting 3D printed resin pieces together, because it just instantly grabs and soaks in. But I also have this Photo-Etch glue from Deluxe Materials. It's the glue applicator tip they give you clogs very, very easy. So what I end up doing is I have, this, they provide this little pin that goes into that to help, plug it so it doesn't dry out. But it doesn't work all that great at keeping this clean and clear. So what I end up doing is I'll actually remove that, and then I use the pin itself to go in there and get some glue and then apply it where needed. Now on this, so we've got these panels. All right, this goes in the forward section right here. So what I'm going to do is just dip into our Photo-Etch glue and smear a little bit in this location, maybe just a little bit more even. All right, and then we'll set that aside for the moment. And I like using tweezers for all of this, just keeping my fat fingers clear of it as best I can. So let's get this over to the edge. And, well, come on. All right. So it goes this way. Get it right in there, in place, and right up to that forward edge. And then that gets the top edge right up against our instrument panel as well, where it's supposed to be. Now there's a little bit of glue that's squeegeeing out there, or squeezing out. So we're just going to get this top edge and make sure it's clean. And then right here, we got a little. All right, so that piece is in place, and we'll let it dry. And then we've got this one as well. And this one goes in back here. Same kind of process. All right, that's it for this update. Be sure to come back again to see how we progress with this build, and there will be some more automotive content coming as well. So stick around, and if you haven't subscribed, why not? Go ahead and hit that like button, give it a subscribe. Peace and love.